pay off the credit card. You must pay off that higher interest rate debt. So it's one of those things, like many things that I talk about, it kind of depends. So if you're in debt, pay a little attention to that, but I could see merit to paying off some small things first so that you feel like you're making progress. Psychologically, that makes a lot of sense to me. Dave's debt thing has what he calls, his whole process has 7 baby steps, and I'm going to go over those briefly here. The first one is before you pay off anything, of course, I'm assuming you pay off the minimums because you don't want to make your situation worse, is that you should have a $1,000 emergency fund. You know what? I don't have a problem with that. That makes sense. Step 2 is pay off the debt using the snowball, which is the smaller ones versus the bigger ones. Pay off the smaller ones first. Then you should build up 3 to 6 months of expenses and savings once you've got that done, and then invest 15% of income into Roth IRAs. Not a problem with the 15%. I if you listen to my show, know that you need to get closer to 20. And it depends on when you're starting. I mean, if you're 22, 10% will work. If you're in the early 30s, I guess 15 will work. But I like that extra cushion of knowing if I'm doing 20% and something comes up, you can have a little slack and you can skip a year or pay less in 1 year and you're still okay. But you have to get back to it. Step 5, college funding plans. He just says plans, but he talks a lot about saving for college. And I think it's a wonderful idea if you have the means to help your children get to and or pay for, or at least partly pay for college. And I have a whole episode on how one should do that. And the way to do that is to not fund college accounts. And we can talk about that. Number 6, pay off your home early. No. Completely disagree. I've talked about this. I've had whole episodes on this. Again, it goes back to this idea of debt is a tool. If you can get a home loan for 4%, and if you qualify for the tax deduction, which almost everybody does, you're effectively paying around 3%, give or take, on that loan. You can invest the extra money that you'd pay into your house and in the long run make 10%. Yes, the stock market goes up a whole lot in any given year, or can go up or down a whole lot in any given year. But over time, it makes around 10%. You do have some taxes on the dividends, but the growth, the capital appreciation, if you're in index funds and you're not trading, you get to keep the vast majority of that until you sell something, and then your capital gains could be 0 or 15, or if you're making around $500,000 a year, 20%. Boo-hoo for you, you made $500,000. So don't pay off the house early. Completely disagree with that one. Build wealth and give. I agree with that. Continue investing in mutual funds and real estate. That's also part of the last step 7. No problem with that. I wouldn't say mutual funds. I would say index funds, and that's something that we're going to talk about a little bit more where Mr. Ramsey and I completely disagree. Real estate, not my thing. I'm not an expert in it. I do know that real estate appraises, and in the long run, it tends to go up about 3%, which is inflation. And where most people get the money out of their real estate is that they're leveraged. So if you put down 5, 10, 20%, if it goes up 3%, you're not making 3% on the 100,000 you put in. You're making 3% or 3,000 on maybe the 10,000 you put in, and it seems like a hell of a return. The problem I have with real estate is that if it's land, you've got to sell it, and that can take a whole lot of time. I like liquidity. Maybe that's just a difference of opinion. We can have that discussion. Or if you have units, apartments, or condos, now you're running a business, and someone's got to run that. You've got to pay someone to run that, or you've got to do it yourself. If you're really good with fixing things, drywall, plumbing, miscellaneous things that you can fix yourself, awesome. That might make sense for you. It's not something I do in this world of specialized tasks. I usually hire people to do those things, but again, maybe that's me, and we can have a difference of opinion. But understand that if you have rental properties that require you to go fix things, you have to incorporate the value of your time. So if you only spend a couple hours a week and you can make $1,000 a week, well, it sounds like a pretty freaking good plan. So just some things to think about, and that's his 7 baby steps. So, I'm not radically opposed to them. There's a lot of stuff that he says that I agree on. I agree on probably most of his stuff about paying off debt. I agree with very, very little of his philosophical and political positions, and I definitely don't want to engage in the blame game of people are poor because they are lazy or they don't read or they don't study. Sometimes that is the case, but a lot of people just, you're born in the wrong city to the wrong family, and we've seen with Donald Trump, he hasn't even beaten the S&P 500, and he's gone bankrupt 3 or 4 times. Not a great businessman. I just had someone the other night tell me, well, I like Trump because he's a great businessman. He's had more failed businesses than successful ones. That's a poor average. Has had 4 bankruptcies where other people pay his debts. And even after all these charitable contributions and paying lower taxes because the rich pay lower taxes in this country, I mean the really rich through capital gains and things like that, he still can't beat the market. So that's pretty embarrassing. That should be a shameful commentary on his skill, but I guess everyone doesn't look at it that way. Now I'm going to talk about some specific investment ideas that I have found on Dave Ramsey's website. There's a PDF there if you really want the link. Let me know, but you can just look up, use the Google, Dave Ramsey Investment Advice. There's a nice PDF that he has, and he lays out his whole philosophy, which I'm delighted that he lays out his whole philosophy because I lay out my whole philosophy on this show. And just like with him, you could read his philosophy and apply some of it. You can listen to his shows and you can apply it. You can listen to my shows and you can apply it. So I can't critique him there. I'm doing the same damn thing. So here's some of investment advice ideas. Don't invest in anything unless you can explain how the investment works to someone else. I like this. I like this a lot. I use the metaphor KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Keep it simple, silly. If you don't understand what you're investing in, don't invest in it. If there's a 120-page contract for the product that is being promoted to you and sold to you, and you are not going to read the 120-page contract and really understand what you're buying, don't fucking buy it. It's real simple. It may be the deal of a lifetime, although I doubt that. Odds are it's a trick. It's legal, but it's ripping you off. But okay, so next thing from Dave Ramsey. I select mutual funds that have a winning track record of more than 5 years and preferably more than 10 years. False. No, not true. I completely disagree. The mathematics and the research, and I've had whole episodes on this as well, show that the past performance of mutual funds does not give you information about how they're going to succeed in the future. It doesn't work. If anything, there's a very slight negative correlation, meaning that the funds that have outperformed, and there are very few, over a 5-year 10 period or a 10-year 10 period, they tend to, no guarantees on anything, they tend to actually underperform the market going forward. So it's kind of, you get to coin flipping. There's 30,000 mutual funds. Some are going to beat the market. It's random chance they're going to beat the market. And when you buy the ones that beat the market, odds are not only that they will regress to the mean, but they will go to the average of a mutual fund that's at least a U.S. market one of underperforming by 2 to 2.5%. And additionally, whatever they are doing may change, and they actually underperform that going forward. So it's another example of very, very insidiously, individual investors tend to buy high and sell low. So you buy a hot mutual fund, and it ends up not working out, and then you switch. And Vanguard did a whole study on this, and you can Google that. It's called Vanguard White Paper, Chasing Performance. Average investors, when they hop in and out of mutual funds, even buying the best ones from the last 3, 5, or 10 years, underperform the average mutual fund by another 2 to 2.3 to 2.5%. So it's not useful. It's counterproductive. Mr. Ramsey goes on and says, I spread my investments evenly across 4 types of funds, 25% in each investment. Here's the 4 types. Growth and income funds, growth funds, international funds, aggressive growth funds. All right, the international funds make sense as a category. The other 3, I've had this discussion before. The difference between growth and income growth and aggressive growth, I have no fucking clue what that even means. They're labels that companies put on the funds. There is absolutely no correlation between growth and aggressive growth and any indicators of how they are going to do, what their volatility is going to be, what their performance is going to be in an up market or in a down market. Growth and income, okay, maybe some of those funds will have a portion of bonds in them, but that's why the growth and income. Some of them use more income-paying stocks. But again, their long-term performance is no better. And if part of the money is bonds, then it's slightly lower, but less volatility. I'll grant you that. But then you have absolutely no control over what portion of your money is safer, what portion of your money is in bonds, or in my philosophy, what I call the cushion. So I disagree with that advice pretty rigorously, pretty intensely. Next one from Mr. Ramsey. I do not own a single stock, and I do not suggest single stocks as part of your investment plan. All right. I agree with that 100%. Don't do it. If you've been gifted stock from someone that passed away, if you got a stock option that you exercised from your employer or former employer, and you're sitting on a whole bunch of stock in a specific company, that is risky. If that company goes out, and sometimes the companies that seem like the biggest guarantee go broke. Enron comes to mind, of course, all the time. Polaroid camera. It just, these companies do terrible things. Chrysler back in the day went bankrupt, reorganized, but the original shareholders didn't get anything. These things happen. That's why you don't want to have all your money in one stock or even half. My general rule of thumb is 5% if you must own a stock. But I do like index funds where you're diversified across hundreds, if not thousands of stocks. Because when you do that, you have virtually eliminated what's called specific stock risk. Next thing from Dave Ramsey, equity indexed annuities contractually agree to limit your loss while you agree to limit your gains. That's true. I do not own these and I do not recommend them for you. 100% agree. I agree with that. All right. From Mr. Ramsey, I do not use values-based investing approach. Okay, I agree, I think, with what he's saying here. And I talk about, moral funds that don't invest in tobacco and military or socially conscious mutual funds. They underperform not only the market, but they underperform average mutual funds. So if you have values that you want to use your money to support, buying a fund that is labeled in some way that agrees with your philosophy, you aren't doing shit. I'm sorry. That's just the way it fucking works. If you have questions about that, of course, with any of this, email me, Phil@Polaris Financial Planning, and please include your telephone number so I can call you, because I will need to call you and schedule an appointment time that works for both of us to discuss it. Next thing from Dave Ramsey. Generally, I recommend choosing A shares, which he makes sure he's clear are upfront commissions. I personally do not choose fee-based planning, paying 1 to 2.5% in annual fees per year. All right, since we're talking about this, full disclosure, my fee is 1% or less, depending on the size of your portfolio. The bigger the portfolio, the lower the rate is. So for him to say that 1 to 2.5%, I've never actually heard anyone charging 2.5%. I'm not saying it's not out there. In big cities, there are a lot of people doing 1.5% to 2%, and that seems to me like an awful lot of money. But I also disagree with his position that you should buy A shares and pay up to 8.5% upfront commission, because not only are you losing 8.5%, you've invested 8.5% less. You have to make 9.5% or 10% just to break even. So taking a big hit up front actually costs you more. The other nice thing about and I wouldn't even use fee-based, I would make sure that you clearly articulate fee only. There must be a fee-only advisor, which means in their registration documents, the only way they get paid, and that should be clearly articulated in the documents they provide to you, the disclosure documents, that the only way they get paid is by you. And you, as the client, as the customer, at any time can walk away with no negative consequences.